The Argonaut had been drifting through space for weeks, its crew focused on their mission: explore a distant sector of the galaxy. It was supposed to be a routine mission, nothing more than a standard procedure for the highly trained crew. But what they encountered that fateful day would change everything. Captain Rachel Adams stood at the command deck, her eyes scanning the glowing screens. The stars around them flickered, silent witnesses to the journey that had so far been uneventful. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound breaking the stillness of the vast void around them. "We should be nearing the uncharted sector soon," Lieutenant James Miller, the navigation officer, said, breaking the silence. Rachel nodded, glancing at the star map. "All systems are good. No issues so far. Let's keep moving." But as she turned her attention back to the monitors, something unexpected appeared on the radar. A small blinking signal. It wasn't a star or asteroid, it was moving, and it was coming toward them. "Lieutenant Miller, what's that?" Rachel's voice was calm but laced with curiosity. She had seen many things on her expeditions, but this was different. This was something new. Miller's fingers danced over the console, his brow furrowed in confusion. "I'm not sure, Captain. It's not on any known charts. And the speed? This thing's moving fast, faster than anything we've seen." Rachel's instincts kicked in. "Get us a closer look and prepare the crew. We don't know what we're dealing with." The Argonaut slowly adjusted its course, moving cautiously toward the unknown signal. As they got closer, the object came into view, far larger than anything the crew had expected. It wasn't a natural object like an asteroid or a comet. It was a massive fleet of ships, hundreds of them, gliding silently through the void. The ships weren't like anything the crew had ever seen. They were dark, sleek, and imposing. Each one looked like a fortress, armed to the teeth with weapons and technology that seemed far beyond anything humanity had developed. They were unlike the ships of any known alien race. Rachel's heart skipped a beat as she stared at the fleet. It was clear now. This wasn't just a random anomaly. This was an empire, and they were not alone. "Captain, we've been detected," Miller shouted, his voice laced with panic. On the ship's screens, they saw that the fleet had changed course, heading straight for them. Rachel felt the weight of the situation settle heavily on her shoulders. "Prepare for potential contact. Set up defensive measures, but do not engage unless I give the order." The crew sprang into action, moving with precision. The tension in the air was thick, each crew member bracing for what might come next. Would this alien empire be hostile? Or were they simply passing through, uninterested in the humans who had just crossed their path? As the fleet grew closer, Rachel stared at the lead ship, the largest of them all. It was immense, dwarfing the Argonaut by comparison. It glided silently through the void, its sleek metal surface reflecting the distant stars. The ship's weapons were visible, aimed, straight at the Argonaut as it closed in. "We need to make contact," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the rising fear inside her. "Open a channel. Let's see what they want." The communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Green, nodded. Her fingers flew across her console, and within moments, a crackling voice came through the speakers. "This is Commander Zentar of the Galactic Empire. You have entered the domain of our empire. Prepare to be escorted to our command center for examination." Rachel's eyes narrowed. The voice was cold, emotionless, and yet there was something in it, something that unsettled her. This was not the typical tone of an enemy preparing to attack. There was no anger, no threat of immediate destruction. It was as if they were being studied. "Commander Zentar, this is Captain Rachel Adams of the Argonaut. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. We seek no conflict. Please let us know how we can resolve this peacefully," Rachel replied, her voice calm and measured. A pause followed. For a moment there was silence, only the hum of the ship's engines filling the air. Rachel waited, feeling the weight of the moment. She had faced many difficult situations before, but this was different. They weren't dealing with pirates or hostile colonies. This was something far more powerful and unknown. "Your peace is irrelevant," Zentar's voice returned, colder now. "You have entered our territory. You are an unknown entity. Your survival is dependent on your actions." The message was clear. The humans weren't being welcomed. They were being observed. The silence was broken only by the distant thrum of the Empire's ships. They were waiting for something. But what? As the fleet continued to close in, Rachel's mind raced. She could feel the weight of the decision before her. Should she back off? Should she show fear and retreat, hoping to avoid a confrontation? Or should she stand firm like a true human? "Captain," Miller spoke up, his voice low. "We don't know what they're capable of. They might be preparing for something hostile." Rachel turned to face him, her eyes calm but determined. "We're not backing down. We've faced this with strength, not fear. We will show them that humanity doesn't run. Not from anything." The crew was silent, watching her. And then, without a word, Rachel made her decision. She would face the unknown, face the Empire, with everything humanity had: courage, calmness, and resolve. But deep down, she knew that what lay ahead could change everything. This wasn't just an encounter with another alien race. This was the beginning of something much larger, something humanity had never faced before, and they would have to face it, whether they were ready or not. As the fleet closed in, the crew of the Argonaut prepared for what would come next, standing united, ready to face the unknown, and perhaps, for the first time, truly test what humanity was capable of. The Argonaut drifted slowly through the vast emptiness of space, its hull vibrating gently with the subtle hum of its engines. The massive fleet of the Galactic Empire loomed ahead, an imposing sight. The Empire's ships were a perfect contrast to the peaceful mission the humans had set out on. They were cold, mechanical, and efficient, each one a symbol of an advanced civilization that had long mastered space travel and warfare. Captain Rachel Adams stood at the bridge, her eyes fixed on the flickering holographic map before her. Her mind raced. The message from Commander Zentar was clear. Humanity had entered forbidden space, and their survival hinged on the next few moments. The crew had taken up positions, tension thick in the air. No one moved without purpose, but everyone knew this. Encounter would decide their fate. Rachel could feel her heart pounding, but her face remained calm. In moments like these, emotions were a liability. The only thing that mattered now was strategy. "We need to make the next move," Rachel said, turning to face her senior officers. "They've shown us their power, but they haven't attacked yet. They want something. Our goal is to figure out what it is." Lieutenant Miller, the ship's navigator, glanced up from his console. "We've crossed into their territory, Captain. They could wipe us out without a second thought, but they're waiting." "Why?" Rachel knew the answer, but it wasn't easy to admit. "They want to see how we respond. We're a curiosity to them. They're testing us, our strength, our resolve, our will to survive." There was a heavy silence. The crew knew it was true. The Empire wasn't interested in destroying them yet. They wanted to see if humanity was capable of handling what came next. It was a test, a game of mental strength. "We need to stay calm," Rachel continued. "They're watching our every move. We're going to show them that we're not afraid. But we need to be strategic. This is no longer about firepower, it's about our minds, our ability to adapt under pressure." Lieutenant Green, the communications officer, nodded and spoke up. "Captain, they've sent another message. It's from Zentar." Rachel took a deep breath. "Put it through." The cold, calculated voice of Commander Zentar echoed through the room. "Human vessel, you stand in violation of our laws. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences. You have no place in our galaxy." Rachel stood tall, her voice unwavering. "Commander Zentar, we are not here to cause conflict. We are explorers. We seek knowledge and peace. But we will not be intimidated. We are ready to face whatever challenges you put before us." The Empire's response came quickly, and the weight of Zentar's words cut through the air. "Your defiance will be your downfall, human. You are not prepared for what comes next." With that, the transmission ended, leaving the crew in stunned silence. The warning was clear. They had pushed the Empire's patience to its limit. Rachel's fingers hovered over the console, ready to make her next move. "Captain," Miller spoke up again, his voice hesitant. "The fleet is starting to close in. They're moving faster now. It looks like they're preparing for something. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. The time to act was coming. We need to outsmart them. We can't fight them head on, but we can make them question their own strategy. She quickly turned to her crew. Miller, I need you to run a series of evasive maneuvers. I want to confuse their targeting systems, make them believe we're moving in unpredictable ways. Miller nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Understood, Captain. I'll initiate the sequence. Rachel then turned to Lieutenant Green. Green, send a coded message. It needs to be a distraction, something that'll throw off their communications and make them hesitate. Green's fingers flew across her console as she worked quickly. I'm on it, Captain. Rachel glanced out the viewport, watching as the fleet of Empire warships grew ever closer. Her fingers tightened around the armrests of her chair, but her face remained calm. She wasn't about to let fear control her or her crew. They had made it this far. They would keep going. Now, she said firmly. Initiate the plan. Miller quickly moved the ship into the first set of evasive maneuvers. The Argonaut spun, weaving in unpredictable patterns, as if caught in a gravitational storm. The Empire's fleet reacted, but they couldn't seem to track the Argonauts' movements. The warships fired a few rounds in their direction, but none hit their target. The crew of the Argonaut was quick, and their adaptability was paying off. At the same time, Green launched the coded message, a series of encrypted signals designed to confuse the Empire's communication systems. The Empire had advanced technology, but even the most advanced systems could be thrown off by an unexpected interference. As the Empire's ship shifted to adjust to the new movements, the crew of the Argonaut held their breath. For the first time in the encounter, the Empire was not the one in control. The human ship was unpredictable, and for a moment, the Empire's command centers were thrown into chaos. The ships hesitated. Rachel could sense it. The Empire wasn't used to this kind of response. They had expected the humans to cower, to panic. But instead, humanity was standing firm, using their intelligence and adaptability to their advantage. The Empire's hesitation lasted only a few moments, but for the crew of the Argonaut, it felt like a victory. The Empire was not invincible. They could be outsmarted. They could be beaten, not through brute force, but through human ingenuity. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest, but she held her composure. Stay focused. We've given them something to think about, but this is far from over. Her words echoed. In the quiet bridge, as the crew continued to move, each member locked into their roles, ready for whatever came next. In the distance, the Empire's fleet began to regroup, but the Argonaut wasn't backing down. Humanity's defiance had made an impact. Now the next move would be theirs. The battle was far from over, but the humans had just proven that they could stand toe-to-toe with an empire without firing a shot. The Argonaut and its crew were more than just explorers now. They were part of something much bigger, and they were ready to fight, not with guns, but with their minds. The Argonaut drifted silently in the cold expanse of space, the Empire's fleet still looming nearby, but now with an uncertain air. For the first time since their encounter began, the Empire had shown hesitation. The brief moments of confusion had been enough to rattle their perfectly coordinated system. And for the crew of the Argonaut, that was something they couldn't ignore. It wasn't much, but it was a crack in the Empire's impenetrable facade. Captain, Rachel Adams stood at the bridge, staring out the viewport as the massive fleet remained in place, seemingly waiting. The stars glimmered faintly in the distance, and the darkness of space stretched beyond. Despite the external calm, there was a storm brewing in her mind. They had proven that they could outsmart the Empire's ships, but this was just the beginning. What would the Empire do next? Captain, Lieutenant Green called from the communication station. We're getting another message from the Empire. It's different this time. Rachel's pulse quickened. The last message from Zentar had been a warning, but this one felt different. She turned to face her communications officer. Put it through. The cold voice of Commander Zentar echoed through the bridge. Human vessel, you have demonstrated a surprising level of resourcefulness. You are not what we expected. We will give you one more opportunity to leave our territory. Failure to comply will result in consequences beyond your comprehension. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She could hear the underlying threat in Zentar's words, but there was something more, something deeper. The Empire was no longer speaking with the same confidence they had at the start. They were beginning to question humanity, to assess whether Earth posed a real threat to their might. The hesitation wasn't just a crack in their strategy, it was the first sign that humanity wasn't as insignificant as they had assumed. "We're not leaving," Rachel replied firmly, her voice unwavering. "You want to test us? Fine, but we won't. Back down. We stand our ground." There was a pause, followed by the soft crackle of static. Zentar's voice returned, but this time it was tinged with something almost like amusement. "Very well, Captain Adams. If it is confrontation you seek, then we shall give you one. Prepare yourselves. We will not hold back." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the crew in stunned silence. The words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine, but she forced herself to stay calm. The Empire had issued a challenge, and they had accepted it. But this wasn't a challenge of physical power. It was a test of will, of resolve, of humanity's ability to stand firm in the face of an overwhelming force. "Captain," Miller said quietly, his eyes fixed on the screens. "The fleet is moving again, but they're not advancing immediately. It looks like they're preparing for something big." Rachel turned her gaze to the monitor. The Empire's ships had begun to change formation, their movements deliberate and synchronized. They were preparing, but for what? Were they about to launch a full-scale assault? Or was this just the next phase of their psychological battle? "Ready for anything," Rachel said, her voice low but resolute. "I don't know what they're planning, but we need to be prepared for whatever comes next." Her crew nodded, their faces grim but focused. This wasn't the time to panic. It was the time to adapt. Humanity had already proven their ability to outthink the Empire. Now, it was time to prove they could endure. Suddenly, the lights on the bridge flickered and a loud alarm blared. The ship shuddered and a jolt of turbulence rocked the Argonaut. The crew immediately went into action, securing themselves to their stations. Rachel gripped the console, her eyes scanning the chaotic readings on the screen. Something was happening. "Miller, what's going on?" she demanded. "We're being pulled off course," Miller shouted over the noise. "Something's affecting our engines. It's like a gravitational force is locking onto us." Before Rachel could respond, a flash of bright blue light appeared on the main screen, followed by the sudden appearance of a massive energy beam emanating from the lead Empire ship. The beam surged through space, striking the Argonaut with intense force. The Argonaut bucked violently, sending vibrations through the entire ship. Rachel's grip tightened, her heart pounding as she fought to steady herself. "Shields," she ordered. "Activate all shields. Now!" But it was too late. The Empire's weapon was more advanced than anything humanity had, and the Argonaut's shields flickered under the strain. The ship groaned in protest as the beam continued to sap its energy. For a brief moment, the crew could feel the reality of their situation. The Empire had taken the first step in showing their power. This was no longer just a test of wits. It was a fight for survival. "Captain," Miller shouted, "we're losing power in the main engines. We can't move, and our shields are failing." Rachel's mind raced. The Argonaut was outgunned, outmanned, and now helpless in the face of the Empire's superior technology. But something inside her refused to give up. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. "Stand firm," Rachel shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We've come this far and we're not going to let them break us now. Get the emergency systems online. We'll fight them with everything we've got." The crew worked with incredible speed, rerouting power and activating backup systems. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity had one advantage that the Empire hadn't counted on: the human spirit. The crew wasn't about to back down. They were going to fight for their survival, not with sheer strength but with their unwavering will. The Empire's fleet loomed ahead, but Rachel knew one thing for sure: they had underestimated humanity. And no matter how powerful their weapons were, they couldn't crush the resilience of the human heart. The Argonaut wasn't done yet. The Argonaut trembled under the Empire's overwhelming firepower, But Captain Rachel Adams refused to yield. The energy beam had weakened their defenses, leaving the ship vulnerable, but the crew was anything but defeated. They were human, and they had always thrived in the face of adversity. This encounter, this test of strength, was far from over. Rachel stood at the center of the command bridge, eyes focused, her face stern yet resolute. The Empire thought they could break humanity with their technology, their vast power. But they hadn't accounted for something that no weapon could destroy: human ingenuity. "Status report," Rachel commanded, her voice cutting through the tension. Miller, the navigator, quickly tapped the controls. "Main engines are offline, Captain. The backup power systems are stabilizing, but we're drifting. Our shields are at 40% and falling. The Empire's beam is causing system malfunctions, but we've regained partial control of internal systems." Lieutenant Green, the communications officer, looked up from her console. "I've been able to scramble our frequency to confuse their targeting systems, but they're still tracking us. They're prepared to fire again." Rachel's mind raced. The Empire was relentless. They hadn't given them an inch, not even when it seemed like the Argonaut was about to fall. The Empire had powerful weapons, but the humans had something just as powerful. They had the will to survive. "Can we generate a false signal?" Rachel asked, her tone sharp. "Something that could mislead their targeting systems?" Green's fingers flew across the keyboard, and her eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "I've got an idea, Captain. We can send a decoy signal, an electromagnetic pulse designed to mimic our energy signature. It'll confuse their systems long enough for us to move in unpredictable patterns." Rachel nodded firmly. "Do it. Miller, you'll need to execute evasive maneuvers as soon as the signal is live." The crew was moving quickly now, each member filling a critical role. They knew that every moment mattered. If they hesitated, the Empire would strike again, and this time they wouldn't be able to recover. The signal was activated and the ship's systems hummed with the sudden influx of new data. The decoy pulse sent a false signature into the void, mimicking the Argonaut's energy output. Rachel's hands tightened around the console as she watched the Empire's ships react. Miller's hands flew across the control panel as he worked, in sync with Green's signal. The Empire's fleet was now confused, their targeting systems momentarily thrown off course. The Argonaut wasn't an easy target anymore. It was moving unpredictably, darting between asteroids, pulling the fleet into a chaotic dance of misfires and missed opportunities. Rachel's heart raced as the ship took another sharp turn. They were buying time to outsmart the Empire, to show them that even when faced with impossible odds, humanity's greatest strength was in their adaptability. "Now!" Rachel shouted. "Target their weak spots." Miller didn't hesitate. He executed a daring maneuver, moving the Argonaut at high velocity towards a gap in the enemy fleet's formation. The Empire's ships were still recalibrating, their systems scrambling to track the false signal in their primary target. For a brief moment, the Argonaut was the only thing in motion, a small, determined ship moving against the vast, silent power of the Empire. "Direct hit, Captain," Miller called out, his voice rising with excitement. "We've damaged their left flank. One of their cruisers is off course. It looks like their main weapon systems have been affected." Rachel's eyes widened as the status screen lit up with success. The Argonaut had hit its mark, and the damage to the Empire's ship was enough to throw their entire formation into disarray. The crew had done the impossible, an unexpected strike from a ship the Empire had written off as nothing more than an irritant. "We did it," Green whispered, still in disbelief. But Rachel knew this was just the beginning. The Empire wouldn't give up easily. They were calculating, patient, and powerful. If anything, their failure to neutralize the Argonaut quickly would make them more determined to crush it completely. "Stay sharp, everyone," Rachel said, her voice steady. "We've made a dent, but we're not out of this yet. The Empire is watching us more closely than ever." The Argonaut's engines sputtered as they were pushed to their limits, but they were still functional. The decoy signal had done its job, and for now the Empire's systems were scrambling to keep up with the unpredictable movements of the Argonaut. Rachel felt a surge of hope. Humanity had just outwitted the Empire once, but they couldn't afford to rest. Suddenly, a new transmission crackled through the ship's speakers. The voice of Commander Zentar was cold, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Respect. Impressive. Humans, Zentar's voice boomed. You have shown resilience we did not expect. But do not mistake this moment for victory. You will not win this trial. Your resolve may be strong, but it will not be enough to defeat us. Rachel's heart raced at the words. The Empire had just acknowledged their strength, but that didn't mean they would back off. Zentar was merely gathering his forces. Rachel's eyes darted across the bridge, and she knew that they had to act fast. They had thrown the Empire off balance, but the longer they stayed in the Empire's sights, the more likely it was that they would be overwhelmed. All systems. Prepare for another round, Rachel said, her voice calm but determined. We've bought ourselves time, but we need to keep moving. This isn't over. We will fight until the very end. Her words hung in the air. The crew knew they couldn't afford to let up. This battle wasn't just about firepower, it was about the will to fight back, the drive to keep pushing even when all seemed lost. The Argonaut wasn't just surviving anymore, it was thriving. They had turned the tables, showing the Empire that humanity wasn't just a weak, untested species. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and resilient, and they were going to keep fighting, no matter the odds. As the Argonaut prepared for the next challenge, Rachel realized one crucial truth. Humanity had already won. It wasn't about who had the most powerful weapons. It was about who could stand strong in the face of impossible odds. And for the first time in the Empire's history, they had met a force that would not break. Humanity wasn't going anywhere. The Argonaut hung in the vast silence of space, still trembling from the battle they had just endured. The Empire's fleet had been forced to regroup after their surprising failure to obliterate the humans. The Argonaut had survived another round, but Rachel knew better than to assume victory. This was not over. The damage to their ship was substantial, and the crew was exhausted. Even with the Empire temporarily thrown off balance, the question still loomed. How much longer could they continue this cat-and-mouse game? Would the Empire just move on, or would they come back with everything they had? Captain, Miller said, his voice low but filled with uncertainty. They're still out there. The Empire's ships are forming up again. They've repaired their systems. It looks like they're preparing for a final strike. Rachel clenched her jaw. She had known this moment would come. The Empire was not one to back down, not when they had been challenged. But they had underestimated humanity. They had seen humans as weak, naive, unprepared for the harsh realities of space. They had been wrong. We'll face them head on, Rachel replied, her voice filled with a steady determination. Prepare all systems for combat, but this time we won't fight to survive, we'll fight to win. The crew went to work, recalibrating their weapons, adjusting their course, and preparing for whatever was coming next. The Argonaut wasn't going down easily. Rachel could feel it in her bones, the power of humanity's resolve. No matter what the Empire threw at them, they would stand tall. They would not falter. The Empire's ships began to move forward, but this time, something was different. Rachel could feel it in the air. There was an undeniable shift in the atmosphere, an unspoken recognition. The Empire wasn't just attacking anymore, they were watching, studying. They had learned something in this confrontation, something about humanity that they had not expected. The fearlessness, the adaptability, the refusal to back down in the face of overwhelming odds. Humanity wasn't the insignificant species they had believed it to be. Captain, Green said, her voice filled with surprise. They're opening a communication channel again. It's from Zentar. Rachel nodded, her expression unwavering. Put it through. The familiar, cold, calculated voice of Commander Zentar filled the room. Captain Rachel Adams, we have underestimated you. Your resourcefulness and your resolve have been impressive. You have proven that humanity is not as weak as we believed. But do not mistake this for victory. You may have won this battle, but the Empire will not stop. Rachel took a steady breath, but she could hear the change in Zentar's tone. He was no longer speaking with arrogance. He was speaking with respect, something that humanity had earned through their resilience. This isn't about victory, Rachel replied, her voice steady and firm. It's about survival. And we will survive. You've seen that we won't just lay down and let you crush us. Humanity has proven that we're more than just a curiosity. We're a force to be reckoned with. There was a long pause before Zentar spoke again. You have earned the right to stand before the Galactic Empire. Consider this your last chance to leave our space. We will not harm you further, but your next move will determine your future. For the first time, Rachel sensed the weight behind his words. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a test of humanity's place in the universe. The Empire's power had been shaken, and now they were giving humanity a choice that would define their future. We will not leave, Rachel said, her voice resolute. We are not your prey. Humanity will find its place in this galaxy, and we will not be bullied into submission. We have proven that we are capable of facing the unknown, of standing firm even against overwhelming power, and we will continue to do so. Zentar was silent for a moment before speaking again. Very well, Captain. Humanity has shown itself worthy of respect. But know this. The Empire will watch you closely. Your future in this galaxy is uncertain. You have earned a reprieve today, but it is a reprieve, nothing more. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the crew in stunned silence. For a moment, Rachel could feel the weight of the moment settling in. The Empire had recognized them. They had recognized humanity's strength. But that was just the beginning. The Empire would be watching, waiting for the humans to make their next move. Rachel turned to face her crew. They've given us a chance. We've shown the galaxy that humanity won't just roll over. We'll make our own place in the universe, no matter the cost. We've won this battle, but the war is far from over. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next. Her words were met with nods of agreement from the crew. They were tired, bruised, but they were not broken. The Argonaut had faced the might of the Galactic Empire and had come out on top. Humanity had shown its true strength, and they weren't going to stop now. Let's get ready, Rachel continued, her voice filled with new purpose. This is just the beginning. We have a galaxy to explore, a future to build, and we'll do it on our own terms. As the Argonaut moved forward, the crew knew that they had just taken the first step into a much larger galaxy. A galaxy that would soon learn that humanity was not something to be underestimated. They had proved themselves, not with force, but with the sheer will to survive, to adapt, and to thrive. And that in the end would be their greatest strength. The journey wasn't over, it had only just begun.